Good morning, sixth graders, and happy Thursday once again. Today, we're going to be focusing on getting you ready for taking your mid-carta. Now, the way that I decided to do this, because it's new for me, is we're going to take the mid-carta in place of your weekly assessment. And it'll be easier to talk about that when I have a visual to go along with it. But I've been thinking about what to do to prepare, and I've made a little review quiz that you can take to prepare yourself for the entire thing. There are a couple questions on it that I want to go into, look them over in particular, maybe not give you the answers, but get you to think about it a little bit, which since you have to watch this Edpuzzle, at least you'll have those ideas. And then we're going to go to something optional you can do to prepare yourself. So I don't think this will be an overly long video, but I do think it's going to be very, very important. So make sure that you give your undivided attention to it. And that being said, let's go to that Google Classroom. Hope you're having a good day so far, everybody. Day that I'm filming this is actually the previous Thursday, so I am having myself a darn good day so far. Been very, very relaxing. All right, so today, when you're watching this, it's January 28th. In your warm-up, I want you to go back to Minnesota history. It's going to talk about treaties. And these were agreements that were made between Native Americans and white settlers, or we'll call them people from the United States government, or the country of the United States. And it's a multiple choice question, and it's just asking you to tell me, what do you think is the best phrase or option that describes what these treaties were actually like? I think we spent at least a day on this in class, maybe 2 or 3, honestly. So which of these best represents the reality of what these treaties were like? Okay. So I'm going to go into this option right here. Now, this is optional and it says it clearly, but I highly recommend it. And the reason being is that these are going to be questions that are in your Carta. So if you do them and you practice, you will do better. I guarantee it. Now, there are going to be some questions that we covered on Tuesday's Edpuzzle when we talked about geography skills and maps. So those we're not going to go into today. But overall, in this review, there are 18 questions. And I picked them quite simply because these are concepts that we've covered up to this point. So I think there are 18 questions, 18 points in your Carta that you should realistically be held to the standard of knowing. Okay, so let's start with the first one right here. Now, when we're talking about movement of humans, a lot of us like to think of immigration. And what I'm going to challenge you with is the idea that this sort of movement of people is like what we're talking about way in the beginning of human history, when people were moving from, we started out in Africa and spread out all over the entire world. Okay, now there is a word for it, and we talked about it, but don't think of it as leaving a place or arriving to a place. It's the whole process of movement. Whoa. Number 2, yeah, let's just try this. Oh, so much better. 3 is stuff that we're going to talk about on Tuesday. So it's 4. Ooh, okay. The fur trade. Now, let's think about this realistically, right? We did a fur trade exercise if you were in the hybrid class. If you weren't, we talked about it pretty much in detail. But think about how these two groups treated each other. Was there one side that was cheating the other? Or was there cooperation? Were there specific goods that were traded between the two that made it a what we call mutually beneficial trade? Now, I don't know about you, but if you go back to your notes or think about what we talked about with the fur trade, I don't ever recall the Native Americans being forced to do anything. Like when we talk about it later on, when we get to Latin American revolutions, the Spanish forced the natives to mine and to work on plantations for them, right? This to me didn't seem that way. In the beginning, mainly because it was the French that were here, they did a really, really decent job in being fair trade partners with the Native Americans. All right, and this is something that we cover too. What are two resources, meaning things that are valuable that people can work to produce and will make money? So there are two of them on here. All I'm going to say is that if you go back to when we were trying to make Minnesota a territory, there were a few things that were brought up that would get people to relocate. And hockey, while a fun sport, would not be one of those things. Okay. So this is a hard question. And what this one is asking, plain and simple, is to read this passage and tell me what this Dr. Eldon Lawrence, who is a person from the Dakota community, is saying here. And really look at this part of the passage right here and see when he changes tone and talks about what the reality is. It's almost like they're trying to be nice and make it sound good, but there are undertones here. There is hidden language that is really much more sinister. All right, and we already covered this with the French fur trade, but they were relatively kind to Native Americans and adopted a lot of their customs. Why do you think this helped them in the trading business? So what would that allow? Think about, it's the interaction of groups, right? Has nothing to do with the value of the furs, has nothing to do with, I think, any sort of actual trading or getting those goods out of there, because that was all Europeans bringing that to Europe. Has to do with interactions between natives and the French. Minnesota's Constitution. Okay. Alexander Ramsey, Henry Sibley, they were guys that did a lot to create that Constitution. The United States has a Constitution as well. It's basically the foundation of what a government is supposed to be, right? What it can do and what it can't do. This one, you either know it or you don't. But if you can go back to when Minnesota became a state, 1858, might be a really good way to check as to what war or what conflict that might have been. But we spent a lot of time talking about it. I don't know how else to give you anything without giving you the answer. This one is difficult. In fact, now that I look at it, I might remove it from the review because we're actually going to get to it in our next unit. We're not going to quite get to it right now. But it's the idea of representative government, and there is a root word that goes along with this. But if you get this one wrong, that's understandable because that isn't one that we talked about. We're going to get back to this one because this one's actually going to be in your exit ticket. And I actually want you to be able to answer this question because I think it's the hardest one on the whole Carta, the whole thing of the 31 original questions. Okay. When you look at a flow chart like this, think to yourself, what are the similarities? Where is the overlap? Students see this question and they go, there's so much information here, Mr. Plog. This is crazy. Take a deep breath. Think of it almost like a Venn diagram. What are things that are similar or the same between ancient Mesopotamia or ancient Sumer and Egypt? Now, we talked about these things, but it's not asking you to do that. It's not asking you to access previous information. Just look at the chart, find the similarities. Okay, what is significant about the battle at Thermopylae? Now, we talked about how symbolic it was, how cool it was, how smart it was, but what this question is asking you is what came of it? Persian army came, Spartans and other Greeks took a stand. What did that prevent or slow down the Persian army from doing? All right. Which philosopher believed that he could get people to get knowledge through asking questions? It's somebody who doesn't believe in the written word at all. He believes that conversation and discussing can come to the bottom of any complex issue. All right. And the development of humans being in one spot permanently really centered around one specific advancement. We talked about this right when we got into world history, right? In Egypt, they were able to do this because of the Nile River. India, the Indus River. Mesopotamia, or ancient Sumer, the Tigris and the Euphrates. The running water allowed for the development of this, and because of that, it allowed people to center in one place. Then it allowed them to pick particular jobs, and eventually, this allowed for the permanent growth of cities, right? But there's one thing that started it, and it came from the ability to control river currents, which allowed for something to be produced. I cannot go any farther than that. All right. Now, this map right here, it's asking you to look and determine, based on what you see, where does it look like migration or movement started? And what did Greek philosophers attempt to discover in their life's work? If I remember correctly, a philosopher is called a lover of wisdom. So which of those options best aligns with a lover of wisdom? Okay. Now, if you ever see these graphics and it's hard to see, remember in a Chrome browser, all you need to do is go up to this triple dot and click the plus button to zoom in. Okay, very useful tool, especially when you have graphics on your tests. Now, I'm going to move my picture. Consider the following information. Areas north of 60 degrees north latitude experience 6 months or more of snow. Using the map, which statement about snowfall in Russia is true? Okay, let's look here. Now, remember, this is as latitude lines go up, they get smaller and smaller and smaller. And this is an above view. Earth down here, we're looking up from above. So we always expect when we see a flat map for lines of latitude and longitude to be straight. Not the case here, okay? If you can see, we're well north of the equator at this point. 60 is here and 60 is here. So what we're doing is we're looking at this line right here, okay? So when you're looking at this, that's going to be the determinant line, right? So let's say we'll start with the third answer. St. Petersburg experiences very little snowfall each year. Well, it's right on 60 degrees north, which means 6 months of snow. That doesn't seem to match up. Now, if it's talking about 6 months of snow per year, but you see that it's south of this 60 degrees north line, you can assume that that's probably false. So what I'm asking you to do is this. When it's bringing up two places, see, is it north of this 60-degree line? If it is, it should have 6 months or more of snow. Anything south of it should have less. So what you're doing is you're using the information that you're given and then relating it to these places to come up with an answer. It's hard. I understand that. But give it your best shot. Come in and see me during study hall today. This is going to be our exit ticket. This literal question right here is just going to be your exit ticket. Same answers, same everything. And we'll see how you do. Okay? Come on, see me. Otherwise, once 3 o'clock hits, get that Carta done. It's going to be right here. And you're going to get 3 points for completing it. 3 test points just for doing all 31 questions. Okay. If you know other ones than the ones we reviewed, great. If you don't, totally okay. If you don't know any of the questions on here, like there's some that we did review and you're still having a hard time with, that's okay too. All I ask is that you give it your best. Okay. Give it your best. 3 completion points. Been a pretty simple week so far. Remember, tomorrow is going to be the due time for any late work from the beginning of trimester to now. So once you get this done, you should have plenty of time to work on any late assignments that you have and have yourself one rockin' weekend. All right. I'll see you on Monday for a live class, which is going to be the first time in a long time. So that's excellent. But otherwise, get all this stuff done. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you then, ladies and gentlemen. Take care now. Oh, and make good choices this weekend, please.